Welcome to Uncontained, episode 192. I'm your host, Aaron Static Render, and, this weekend on the 29th of February, Uncontained turned 4 years old. Thank you to everybody that's been with the show since the start, and welcome to everybody who has joined along the way or just listening for the first time today. Hopefully there's a few of you out there. And, 4 years, 192 episodes, including this one and counting. So this one, our 4th year anniversary, I have Chris Herren, also known as Faust. He is a magic pantomime who has a throwback style. He takes it back to, say, the 1920s, early 1900s with a parlor style of magic. And for those of you who don't know, it's a closer up close, more intimate style of magic that he likes to perform. So think of it as having him perform magic in your living room. He's not actually coming to your living room, but maybe it could be arranged. I don't know. But Chris is on the show today. He does break character. So it's not just me asking questions. He does talk. Otherwise, that would be a very boring interview. But this interview is far from boring. We cover how he got into magic and how battling cancer at 35 kind of forced him out of magic for a while, but also inspired him to create this character, Faust, and perform magic on a much larger scale. Chris is a member and castle knight at the world-famous Magic Castle in Hollywood. Also, he's performed on Jeff McBride's Wonderground in Las Vegas and won the first prize in season 1 of Culture Clash, Vegas Magic Edition. And recently, and as you'll find out in this episode, he's been contacted by America's Got Talent, so hopefully we'll see him on national television sometime soon. But I wouldn't be doing my job as a podcaster if I didn't say, please subscribe to Uncontained in your favorite podcast player, and also check me out online, Facebook, Instagram, and even Twitter from time to time at Uncontained Pod on those, and uncontainedpod.com is where you can always find the show as well. Now let's jump into my conversation with magician Chris Herren, who will be performing live at Lucky Chances Casino every month now. It's a once-a-month show kicking off March 28th. It's called the Magic Speakeasy. So if you are in the Bay Area, make sure you check that out. You can find out more information at chrisherrenmagic.com or check out his social media, which will be in the show notes. This is my conversation with Chris Herren, A.K.A. Faust. Welcome to Uncontained. And how are you doing this morning, man?
Thank you. Thank you very much. First, thank you for having me on your show. And I'm doing real good, and I've been looking forward to talking with you and sharing some stories for sure.
Yeah, dude. I'm looking forward to it too. So your style of magic is kind of a throwback, as I mentioned in the intro. You use pantomime and magic, and it has I don't know. I'm just going to throw out a date and say like a 1920s feel to it.
Yes.
I could be off by a decade or two either way.
Oh, you're right. You're dead on. So pantomime is something that was, developed, I think, in terms of its modern form in the 18th century. But from my research and from what I'm trying to resemble in the style of magic goes back to the early 1900s of just performing, in people's houses. And that type of magic was called parlor magic. So it's not big stage and it's not very close, but it's kind of like in between and still intimate.
So that's kind of why your stage set from the videos that I saw looks kind of like a living room.
Right. And so parlor actually means, a living room of types,
Okay. All right. Very cool. So, with just to get a little insight on how you came into this style of magic with like all the David Blaine's and like all the big like shows in Vegas or whatever, what made you decide to go with a smaller, more intimate, less like Carbonero effect style of magic?
Well, I think, going way back, I was used to, watching the big stage Vegas magic. And I never really had any ambition to actually perform at any level. But I did do like kid shows when I was younger.
Okay.
And what I found was is I liked that sort of interaction with people. And when you're on the big stage, it's more like a presentation or a theater, and you have that fourth wall kind of separating you from the audience. And what I enjoyed was is when the magician would interact with you. And so when I did kid shows, that was the type of things that I would do, is kind of get up close, but then step back and do a presentation of whatever it was I was doing, you know.
Okay. All right. So, how old were you when you first got into magic, and what was the draw to magic?
When I was about, I would say 6 or 7, my grandmother would tell me stories of these magical beings that existed in Philippine folklore. So my imagination was already vivid back then, but
Okay.
my, that was an influence. And then my mom kind of gave me my first magic book when I was around 12 years old. And and that really intrigued me. And, throughout my life, I really couldn't tell you why I gravitated towards magic. But what I could tell you is that it just kind of came natural. But again, I didn't really have that ambition like a lot of people did, was to, be on that stage performing big magic,
Yeah.
I just enjoyed it.
Very cool. So, um, let's see. I'm trying to think of some good magic questions. Or actually, let's talk about the folklore that your grandma told you a little bit. Then we'll come back to the magic. Like, did she talk about
Yeah.
the aswang and like stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
it seems like your folklore then,
I
definitely.
know a little bit from guests. I interviewed like you mentioned that you watched or listened to an episode with the Haunted Bay people
Yeah,
who went around and like visited haunted areas. Well, one of those guys from that show also made a movie called Vampiria, which he's Filipino and he focuses on the legend of the Aswang and
yeah,
like I saw that movie and I was like, whoa, that vampire just like splits in half and like shoots out like
yeah.
a venom tongue, like the Marvel character Venom, not full of venom, but it's like,
You're right.
wow, that's creepy. I always thought like like Count Dracula when I thought of Dracula growing up, I want to suck your blood type thing. And like just to see there's other aspects of vampire lore out there is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think, we would find similarities in these, folkloric characters that are mentioned. But you're right, Aswang is definitely, a version, I guess, of the vampire.
Yeah.
But the one character that my grandma had told me about is there was a guy, I guess, and he had this book, and this book was sort of like magical. And this book wasn't necessarily just to be read, was what she said. She said that this old man could place this book on the ocean, and basically the book would act like a surfboard and carry him across the water. That's her explanation, that
Okay.
from what I can recall. No, I bring that up because in my current act, I have a magical book. And so I was kind of thinking about what she told me as a young boy, and I tried to implement a sort of illusion that kind of alluded to a magic book. So that's the kind of influence I had with these stories, is I always try to reference it and try to bring touch on, these stories that I had heard as a kid.
Yeah. So like, how did the guy surfing on a book inspire the magic book trick? Because I watched the thing, and you don't like stand and float on the book, which would be really cool if you could levitate. But
Right.
and I'm sure you might have that trick in your back pocket somewhere.
Right. I think it wasn't necessarily, the fact that he could step on that book, but I kind of was thinking of the magical properties that book came with, and she only mentioned one aspect of that book, and that was that this book can be sort of like a magic carpet for this man. So I asked myself is if I had a magic book, how would that magic book interact with me, and
Okay.
how would it, you know what I mean? So I wanted, I didn't want to completely take away from that story, but I wanted to, implement personal aspects of my own life into these magical effects that I do. And if you look at everything that I do in my act, I do try to reference some kind of feeling or experience I had into my act. And the magic book is one aspect. So, I always think, what magic power would I have if I could? And it would be definitely to levitate something. And so that's why it became the way it was.
That's cool. That's cool. So, um, it's tough interviewing a magician because there's so many times you want to ask, like, well, how do you make the book levitate? But you can't really tell me that. So without
Yeah.
having to kill me and my entire audience. So
No, definitely. No, it's you're right. And even if I were to explain, on the side on how it would be done, it would be difficult to do that without actually showing you these effects. Now, people always ask me, how do you do this and how do you do that? And I always kind of leave them, with the thought that, magic is a form of entertainment, and it is an art, and it's kind of best to just leave the mystery be, you know.
yeah. So I'm going to rephrase the question just a little bit, and maybe you can answer this. Like, how do you go about like approaching learning a new magic trick or a new style of magic? Is there like a place where you go look? Is there like a magic book, not necessarily the surfing one, but just a book full of magic that you can go like find out secrets or what?
Right. So it is very difficult to learn good magic tricks because um, I think, if you had books, even the book itself, it's very difficult to translate all that material. And some part of you has to make your own assumptions on how to hold something, or the angles or the type of materials to use. But if there's something that you just can't look up on YouTube, um, I'm a member at the Magic Castle in Hollywood,
Okay.
and so what they do really good is that they have this library. It's an all-encompassing library on just about every kind of magic trick or magic illusion that you could think of. And as a member, you can go in there and actually research material that dates back all the way to the 18th century. And, if you're really serious about, creating an illusion or learning some sleight of hand, books is probably, the best way to go, really. And then, I mean, if you're an aspiring performer and you really want to take it to another level, you would have to get a mentor or a teacher to actually show you these things.
Okay.
And, and that's something that, kind of carried me throughout my, magic journey, so to speak, is that I had to seek out a mentor, because translating from books to, your own hands is a very difficult process. And I'm a visual learner. And
Yeah.
so, once I started taking magic classes, and then I found a mentor, and my mentor's name is Jeff McBride. He lives in Las Vegas, and He's quite a legend in magic, and he's performed on the Vegas Strip. And I idolized him as a young boy. And it just so happened he taught classes at a Las Vegas school called the Magic and Mystery School.
Okay.
So 3 years ago, I actually, took my first class there. I never took a class before, and that experience changed my life. He said something to me. He said, the only way you can give someone a magical experience is to first experience it yourself. And so when I walked into this school, and it's basically at his house, he made the whole experience very magical for me, as if we were going through some sort of ritual experience. And then
Okay.
he went on to share his magic, and then I understood that magic is something that you give to people. It's not just something you perform. And with that approach to magic, it kind of changed my style. It changed my whole approach to performing magic to people. And I think that's when it started, elevating to this different level of just showing tricks. But and I think you mentioned to me, what advice would I give to someone aspiring to be a magician, and that would be it, is to really seek out someone who can also show you these tricks. It's
Okay.
very important. um I think, even in the we were talking about folklore too. Even in, let's say, Merlin, or someone like that, Merlin had an apprentice, and those apprentices learned the wisdom from Merlin, and apprentices sort of carry on that knowledge. So it's all in this sort of history of magic, that every master is going to take on an apprentice, and that apprentice soon becomes the master. But
Yeah.
the knowledge is handed down verbally and physically, especially for this kind of art form. you know
Yeah, that's cool. It's like I imagine it would be helpful to actually see the trick being done and then let you in on like break down like, okay, this is a sleight of hand. I make this distraction over here, so but the magic is happening over here and all that. So having them like, oh, okay, it's like unlocking the magic box and having the genie pop out and tell you how to do stuff. Not that
right.
genies are in boxes, but I don't know. That's a bad analogy. Uh,
No, that actually works. I think, the greatest thing in magic, though, is that you could come up with anything if you have the imagination for it. Now, to apply those techniques and to really make it work, then, obviously you have to commit some time to it. And that's what I found in magic is, you know, anyone can do a trick and perform it in a certain way. But I think for me, it was about telling the story about, like I mentioned to you, the folklore
yeah.
is, I the reason why I connected to these characters was not because of the magic itself. It was because of the story of, who this person was. And so with Faust, that's what I'm trying to do. I wanted to tell a story about, this sort of fictional character named Faust, and why he's doing what he's doing. And that to me was very important. And so when people watch my sort of magic, they see the magic, obviously, but they see the character too. And I believe that it's my job to create that illusion that this character is very real, and not just some guy you see in a mask, prancing around on the stage or something like that. So I take great care in trying to build that illusion for the audience, like, wow, this guy really looks like someone completely different than, the guy without the mask.
Definitely. So the style of the mask, like the way you put the face on there, is there like a story or a reason behind the expression on the mask?
Yeah, I always wanted, like I said, I always wanted to tell a story, but I gravitated towards, these tragic characters who looked very, like monster-like, but they had
Yeah.
very, very human-like characteristics. Because I connected with that in a way, with that sort of character. His face kind of, if you really look at it, it kind of resembles Edward Scissorhands. And
Really?
yeah,
I'll
and
have to look again.
yeah, I like Edward Scissorhands' kind of neutral expression with things, like he's almost surprised, or or just kind of trying to absorb everything, because he's almost seeing something for the first time. And
Yeah.
that's what Faust is, and I put some scars on his face to resemble, his tragic past, and so everything was carefully thought out. I wrote a whole life for him, and that way I can understand who he is as a character and how he would respond to the audience, and something like that, because I really want this character to be real, and not, again, someone wearing a mask, you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's like I'm sorry, I'm looking up the image to see it. Like it
No.
looks at some point kind of I don't know. Yeah, I see like the seeing something for the first time, but there's a little depth where it almost looks sad in some moments. And
Yeah.
like I don't know, but your mannerisms don't necessarily go with the sad. They're kind of like almost. I'm trying to explain it, but it's kind of hard. It did
Yeah.
remind me of, say, like the silent films and stuff where you're kind of moving around kind of in the same manner as a Charlie Chaplin or a Buster Keaton in a way, but it's
Yeah.
almost like a shy version
Yeah.
of them. So it's like you're kind of like, oh, should I be out here doing this magic with this floating book? Am
Yeah.
I off in that, or am
No,
I
you're
close?
you're right on, and I think with Faust, you're right. He comes off melancholy, and that's for
That's a good word.
it's very. I mean, you're right on it, and I think by you saying that, I think the direction and my approach to Faust is, that's what I wanted people to feel. I didn't want to be too overt with it,
Yeah.
but Faust truly is a tragic character. And you know, if I can tell you how I developed him, he was actually based on parts of my past, not completely, but when I was 35 years old, I was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh,
Yeah, and but I'm all in the clear now, so
that's good.
yeah, it's very good, and I'm very grateful for that. But when I was 35, I was going through cancer. I went through chemotherapy, and you know, I was feeling like very alone, during that time, because of you kind of feel like you're the only one going through it, and just with the treatment and the feeling of something that you're not in control of,
Yeah.
you know it kind of made me recluse into this little shell. But as I was recovering, I knew I wanted to tell that story of how I was feeling, to how I wanted to kind of break out of that shell, and I just didn't know how I wanted to express it. And about 7 years down the road, I had kind of this revelation, like, I need to put this down on paper or something. But what happened is I I thought I was going to write about it, but it didn't come out that way. It's kind of started gravitating more towards, okay, make a character that kind of uses magic as a platform to communicate these feelings.
Okay.
And so when I went to that class in Las Vegas at the Magic and Mystery School, the mentor I had, we kind of collaborated. I gave him my idea, and he says, "Okay, well, let's run with it. Let's try it." And so after 3 years, that I was able to implement all those feelings, all those experiences into Faust. And so when Faust performs on stage, he really is a metaphor. Faust is a metaphor for change. He's a daydreamer, and he really isn't what he, presents himself to be, like this magical being. That's what he daydreams about. That's what he wants to be.
Okay.
But when he's off stage, he's kind of like this guy still trying to break out of, this shell that he's in. But when he comes and meets you, you see, and the magic too, you'll notice that he's not in complete control sometimes. He's almost as surprised as you, you know. So
Yes.
I didn't want this all powerful, being on stage. I wanted someone who people could relate to and look past the magic and kind of start wanting to get to know the character more than this whole idea of show me something, trick me.
Definitely. So, like, is there a way that you show how Faust is off stage? Like, because you were saying off stage, he, wants to be that magical being, that magical character. Is there? Does the audience get a look into his offstage persona well on stage? I guess.
I guess so. I mean, it's very hard to say that, there are no parts of me in Faust. There are definitely, personal experiences that I put into Faust that are my own, and that's how I connect with them. That's how I make it real.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really a trained actor, and I can't come up with, a completely fictional character. I'm not that great, so you know, my performance choice was to create this sort of alter ego. But, when I'm off stage, I definitely am not Faust, and, and that character needs to be separate from me, because again, he doesn't talk. And,
Yeah.
you know, but, on that note, in my stage act, I do take off the mask and talk a little bit,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, but even then, that's a different character than the mask of Faust, or the version of Faust that wears Faust. I kind of wanted to, um, take off the mask to narrate what was going on, because it's sometimes people wonder, like, what is, what's happening on stage. And so there is a character up there that takes off his mask and kind of guides people through, and I call him the keeper of Faust, and
Okay.
he's just there to kind of guide you along and tell you the story of Faust. But even that in itself, I don't see that character as me, because he's more of like he sees Faust as this sort of valuable piece of collection, that he just wants to present to you or something like that.
So kind of
But
like the ringleader of the circus or the ringmaster.
yeah,
Uh
absolutely, yeah. I mean, if people are going to take away what to expect when they see me, they can definitely see, you know, more of a theatrical experience when they watch my magic, but it's a magical experience that, you're definitely going to see magic, coming at you. But, what you're seeing is a story, a story that you can follow, or an experience of meeting Faust as he's on the stage, because he will interact with you through magic, and it's fun, it's melancholy at times, but it's also uplifting, when you
yeah.
watch. And that's the cool thing about, being able to do stuff like this, is you can take it wherever you want to.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I want to go back to a point that you made, like, well, you started talking about the character, about how it's not 100% fictional character. It has a lot of you in it as well, or at least some of you.
Yeah.
And I think I've heard like magic compared to comedy a lot, as far as like when in like stand-up comedy, it's like if once you do a joke, it's kind of a magic trick. Once people have seen it, it's like, oh, it loses just a little bit of the magic, opposed to like a band who can play the same song and over again, where people are like, oh, I love this song. People, like what brings them back. But
Right.
like comedy, music, and magic, like if you put a little of yourself in there, that's what makes it feel to the audience like they're getting a real experience. That's what helps connect. If you're just writing about or performing things that are like completely superficial, you'll just have a superficial connection opposed to a personal.
Right. I think you're right. I mean, as a magician, you can only do so many tricks. And, if you have people that come and watch you and over again, yeah, I think the experience would be kind of diluted because they're seeing the same stuff over and over or
Mm-hmm.
hearing the same jokes over and over. And so that's where, this character, I always look at whoever is in the audience, whether it's the same people or not. To me, I take that word experience and I try to make them part of the whole magical experience by bringing them into my world. And not only do I do the magic, I give them the opportunity to do the magic also, so that
Oh,
I'm not the only one empowered here. I'm not the only one magical. You know, part of the school of thought that I do when I perform magic is that you want to be able to give them that gift as well, to be able to do something magical, and if that is something that you can do, I think people will, one, have a better time with it. And if they do see that, this trick over and over again, you know at least it becomes more personal with them, because it's going to be different. I try to do it organically every
yeah.
time, but yeah, so for me, I I think it's very important to bring the audience in and make them a part of it rather than me just presenting, this illusion from this stage where they just sit back and watch. I try not to do that for the most part, and I want to key in, and I'm very aware of everyone's, emotions and who's watching and how they're reacting. So I'll kind of react to that. And, my thing is to really, really focus on them and to give them this gift of a magical or memorable experience, you
That's
know.
really cool, man. That's really cool. So where can people see you? I know you have a show coming up in the Bay Area soon.
Yeah, so we are having a show at Lucky Chances Casino in Colma, California. And right now it's a once a month event. It's called the Magic Speakeasy. And I'm inviting some of my friends over from the magic community. Cecil and Mighty were on America's Got Talent, so they will be joining me as well as Raul. And what we are doing is we're trying to present um, some world class magic to the community here in the Bay Area, and very different styles of magic. And we're hoping that people will come down and kind of enjoy this sort of form of magic. And I can guarantee you that these magicians were carefully picked because of the contrast of styles that we perform.
Cool.
And it's very important to me that people see magic in different lights. My style of magic in comparison to another person's. You mentioned that my style of magic comes off almost melancholy in a way, and I definitely touch on those points more than I would with comedy or high energy forms of magic. So that's what you would see in comparison to the other people that I'm performing with. So the Magic Speakeasy at Lucky Chances Casino, March 28th. you
I
know.
like that name, the Magic Speakeasy. Very
Yeah,
cool. Takes you back to the 20s again too, and prohibition with the speakeasies, and very
yeah.
very fitting for your style. Now, do you like tour the country, or are you mainly in California?
Well,
Where?
I yeah, definitely. So I try to travel as much as I can to expose people to, my style of magic. So I've been to Portland, Las Vegas, and uh, Los Angeles. I just came back from this pretty cool variety show out in Hollywood. It's called Scott Neary's Booby Trap. You know, yeah, you know what? I get, I perform a lot for variety shows. Kind of, you mentioned the early 1900s when vaudeville was, at its golden age, and you had like 16 or so acts all in one night. I do a lot of those types of shows,
Okay.
and it's kind of reminiscent of the olden days. But yeah, primarily I'll be in Vegas, doing conventions, such as the Magic and Meaning conference. It's, primarily for magicians, but also people who just want to learn magic. I'm at the Wonderground in Las Vegas, and if anyone is in LA, the Magic Castle in Hollywood. I'm in the cellar, and basically that's a little area where members can perform, on any given night, and you'll see me downstairs practicing new material and stuff like that on a regular basis.
Very
Yeah.
cool, man. Very cool. I'll have to get out to the Magic Castle at some point. Get down to LA and check it out, because I actually had somebody else on my show that was either a junior member, or because there's two different levels of members, right? As far as performing, like the introductory, and his name was Aaron O'Brien. Um,
Yeah, I know Aaron. We
you
we
know Aaron?
performed. Yeah, we performed at Celebrities of Magic in Bakersfield. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he's been on the show before, and so like when you started talking about the Magic Castle, I was like, I wonder if he knows him. But
It's a small community, definitely. Yeah. So junior members, it means that they're not over 21, I believe.
okay,
Yeah, and actually, if you're a junior member, it's really quite difficult to be part of that group because they really scrutinize. I think with all members, we all have to audition just to become members of the Magic Castle, but they really scrutinize the junior members.
yeah. He said there was like a passing phase, like you had to be passed into like a like regular member or like a senior member. I don't know the correct terminology of the Magic Castle. I apologize,
No,
but
it's all good, man. It's all
but
good.
it'd be cool to check out the Magic Castle after hearing so much about it. I've seen it on some like movies and stuff like that too. So
Well, you
uh
have my personal invitation to come. You just let me know when you're ready to come, and I can definitely, arrange a tour of the castle for you, if not personally, with someone else as well.
that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
All right, man. So all right, so your show every month at the Lucky Chances Casino in Colma, California, and it is the Magic Speakeasy, and you can check that out. Is it going on February too, or?
No, March 28th, and then, we'll have at least once a month, in April, then
Oh,
in May.
is that when it's starting March?
Yeah, so this will be our very first event,
Okay.
um, starting March 28th, and then, we'll continue on, and we'll kind of see how it goes from there, you know.
All right, very cool. So if you're in the Bay Area or able to travel to the Bay Area, make sure you check that out. Now, I have like the 5 questions that I ask all my guests coming up. You've kind of answered some of them a little bit, but I'm going to ask them to
Yeah.
you anyway and see if you come up with different answers. So the first part is the very most basic question of them all, but it's like, what advice you have for somebody who is looking to get into, I'll just throw it out as magic. I won't narrow it down so specifically to just your genre. So what advice you have for somebody who is looking to get started out in magic?
The first advice is probably the biggest one that, if you really want to take magic to, a professional level, then I would say find a mentor that is, compatible to you. And because that mentor is going to give you advice and experience and actually show you these, complicated sleight of hands that you really can't just translate from a book too easily. But when I got a mentor, that really catapulted my skill level and my understanding for the business. And, if you really want to take it professionally, then I think you should cover all the bases and find yourself a mentor that's compatible to you.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right, cool. And I was just thinking, like, how, like, getting started. Are there like magic open mics type things? Like, comedy has open mics where anybody can go get up on stage, try out new material, or just try out stand-up comedy. Is there something similar like that in the magic world?
If you're definitely, all new to the magic community, I think being part of a local magic club is a great start. That's something that I did, and they're all over the place with the Society of American Magicians or International Brotherhood of Magicians. They have local chapters everywhere, all over the world. And I think, you'll find that they do these sorts of local, in-house performances and competitions. And I think, if you really want to dabble into that, then I would try that first, and go from there.
Okay, cool, man. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now, what currently, besides this podcast, are you doing to promote yourself and Faust?
Yeah. So, it's really been busy. I think my approach is, outside of doing the interviews and going through promotions with, the newspapers, I think just getting out there. I've been on the road and performing basically everywhere that, anyone will let me. Because I think the one thing, people um, will want to see is, I can talk about how I perform and about this character Faust, but until you see it, I don't think you're necessarily going to get it. And so if you've seen me out there, like I was just in LA and then I was at the Magic Castle in the cellar performing, and that's my way of at least promoting myself and this show is by actually hitting the road and just showing what you can do, and people will kind of get it whether they want to see more or not, and that's how I've been doing it.
Okay. So kind of relying a little bit on word of mouth to help spread too. Like people come see your
Right.
show. I just saw this Faust character and
Yeah.
you should check it out, man. If you're sharing it with the friends who haven't experienced it yet. So very cool, man. That's always a really good way to go because people will pay way more attention to word of mouth from somebody they know than scrolling through Instagram and seeing like, oh, there's this guy, Faust, so he's coming here. Well,
Right.
maybe might be cool to see, but I don't know if I'll get off my couch. I might just Netflix it tonight. Getting people to put pants on and go outside is difficult nowadays.
Right. Right, you're right. And you know what? And I do the YouTube, I do Vimeo and stuff like that. And I think even still, it's different, to see me on the YouTube and performing a piece, but to see me live, is different than seeing me on YouTube. I think even for me, the impression is different because again, I I go for that organic interaction with people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like watching a comedian on stage, and when he's doing it in front of you, man, you're really feeling those jokes, and it's much more fun that way. And so, yeah, I do the videos and stuff like that to promote myself, but I really, really do believe that you just gotta perform and get out there and really do it that way. you know?
Great, man. That's awesome, man. Yeah, there's nothing that compares to the like intimacy of seeing a live performance. You know,
Right.
it's like you can. There are some really great videos that come across as like almost feeling live,
Yeah.
but like when you get into that experience in person, whether it's a band, a comic, a magician, or I don't know what else, a psychic reader. I'm just throwing things out there now. They're better in
Yeah.
person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right, because it's an experience, and I think it's just more personal, and people are more inclined to connect with you if you're right there in front of them. I think it's a hard medium to just record something and let people watch it and kind of get it, you know. And I mean, if you look all over my Instagram, you'll see this guy in a mask, and if I was going to see that, I wouldn't quite completely get it, and I'm not necessarily, you know, um, I wasn't necessarily into mimes or clowns for that matter, when I first started. So there might be people like that they'll just judge you off of your, surface. But,
Yeah.
there's more to it than, this face. You know what I
You mean
mean?
people judge you off the surface in social media? No way. No way.
Yeah,
No way.
especially this guy right here in a mask. Yeah. But
They don't look deeper on social media,
why, why,
unfortunately.
why should I? Yeah.
All
My
right.
expectations are too high. I'm sorry, but yeah, no, but you're right. You're
It's just the nature of the beast, man.
Yeah,
But all right. So, um, what is a hardship that you've had to deal with, like, and that you may have turned into a positive or learned a valuable lesson from?
yeah. If I may, I got two of them.
Go
Oh
for it.
man, so I mentioned I had cancer. Now, when I was 35, I gave up magic because of cancer because I had these sort of Parkinson-like tremors in my hand and I couldn't handle anything, you know. So
Yeah.
I just kind of I still loved magic. I watched it and all that and I kind of just fed, my mind with, magic because I enjoyed it. But, thinking back then, I never thought that really horrible experience would lead to creating a character that has somewhat led my magic career or, given my magic career some sort of energy and new inspiration. So, that would be one obstacle. Like you can take the worst situation that you've gone through and if you just kind of embrace it and, accept that it was horrible, it might
Yeah.
turn into something positive, and at least for me, it did, you know? And so,
Yeah.
that's my personal obstacle that I kinda turned into something positive.
That's a big one, man. And it's like you never know what you can handle though and persevere over until you're dealt with it. Like when I was 27, I've mentioned this on my podcast before. I went blind in my right eye
Oh, wow.
due to essentially what is a stroke of the retinal artery.
Yeah,
Had a blockage of it due to something called high homocysteine, which is a hormone that makes your blood clot.
yeah,
And yeah, if you would have told me before that oh, you're gonna go blind in one eye, I'd be like, no, that's gonna be the end of the world.
right.
But basically, I just bump into stuff more. But
That's nothing wrong with that. I do that with 2 eyes, you know? So
I know. I'm sure I did it with two eyes too, but now I have an excuse. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. I'm blind in my right eye. But it's kind of like once you're faced with that situation, you somehow find a way to deal with it because it's like you can either sit in the corner and cry about it and feel bad for yourself,
yeah,
which sometimes you might need to do that for a brief period of time, but then make the decision to come out of that corner and make the best of what you have. And that sounds like what you did.
right. Yeah, and absolutely. I think, you just never know where inspiration can come from. And it might even that sort of obstacle might even push you,
Yeah.
further than where you were at. And because prior to that experience for me, I had no ambition to perform or be creative on this level. I mean, I'll be honest, it was the furthest thing from my mind. But when I went through that, it definitely, you know, I can sit here and sulk about it and recluse, or
Yeah.
or I can do something with it, and that's what kind of led.
Exactly. And it, like, in a way, gave you inspiration for the character. So, like, gave you something to pull from an experience in
Yeah,
life, and it's not always easy to find the silver lining.
right, right, and it's just a mystery, and that's really what magic is it's a mystery. You don't know if it's going to come or not, and fortunately, it came for both of us. I would assume.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And gives you an option to make something more personal as
Yeah.
well. So what is your second hardship that you dealt with? Cancer is a big one.
Yeah.
What's the
So
second?
that one was, I always refer to that as the personal obstacle, but I think, if anyone's out there, even on the performance level, and a lot of the more active performers would give you the same sort of experience. But yeah, not everything, when you're performing, not everything goes as planned, So there was one obstacle when I was performing, at a club, and my music just went completely out, and I rely on music as a big part of my act to kind of set a tone,
Yeah, I can imagine with no words.
Right, right, so so when it went out, I literally had to do my closing act silent, like, without no sound, just me up there in a mask and my prop, and, rather than panic, I, followed suit, and I just did the act, and I interacted with the crowd a little bit, and, of course, improvised. But, I came off the stage really shaken because I had prepared so much for a music-driven piece, and I didn't really plan for that to happen. However, every time now, every time I perform, I always have it in the back of my head that something like that might happen, and I always prepare for those moments. So I took that experience, and I really, you know, um, kind of looked at my act at different angles and said, okay, what if this happened? What if that happens? And I think that kind of made me a better performer, because I went through that experience. And, for performers out there, it's going to go bad. If not now, it will go bad, right? You know that.
Yes.
And so, if you can only prepare so much, but I took that obstacle, and I made it into a positive.
That's awesome. And working doing things in the entertainment world and things go wrong like that, it actually helps prepare you for things in life as well. Like, because it helps you develop the mentality like, okay, this just happened. The show has to continue. What can I do to make this work? Instead of dwelling on like, oh crap, there's no music. There's no music. Nobody's gonna like this. There's no music.
Right.
You have to be like, okay, what can I do to make this still entertaining and move forward? What will solve this problem or make it less?
Right. Right. It's definitely something to reflect on in your own
Yeah.
performance, whatever you're doing. What if this? What if your mic goes out? What do you do? And
You don't have to worry about the mic going out. That's a nice thing
right,
about that.
right, and it happens often. At least with some performers that I've worked with. Sometimes the mic is just feeding back just way too hard, or you know, you just
Yeah.
gotta work those things out. Um, and those are going to be obstacles that occur constantly. You know.
All right, so let's switch this up a little bit and go with what is a highlight that you care to share with the uncontained audience. It doesn't have to be the highlight of your career, because that's kind of I don't know, a,
Right.
a dick question to ask. But what is a highlight that you care to share? Just something that's like, oh, dude, this was awesome.
Yeah, so One, I never expected to go on this sort of journey in this craft, right? So I've only really been doing it professionally for 3 years. And so, you just kind of go into it blindly, head on, just performing, and doing your thing. And the one thing that kind of really inspired me even further, even though I don't know if it's going to take off anywhere, was that I made videos, just randomly and just really putting myself out there. Well, just I would say a couple months ago, this producer from America's Got Talent emailed me,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, and I was kind of skeptical. I'll be honest. He introduced himself and he said, "Hey, I'm this guy from America's Got Talent, and I would like to film you because I seen a couple of your videos and you would look good for our opening sequence for season 15." And I'm like, "Oh, this guy's another scam." So, but deep down inside, I'm like, you know what? I got to confirm it.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? I just was curious on that level. I was like, what if? What if I just ignore it? But, anyways, I did contact him and it was all confirmed. He says, look, we think you'd be a good face for America's Got Talent. We want to do some filming, and in return, you don't have to wait in the huge line of people.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So I didn't have any, I didn't think I was gonna audition or anything like that. But I went down there, I filmed, it was a great experience. I auditioned. I'll find out this month whether I go to the second stage. But for me, what I took away from that whole experience is that you just do your thing, and even though it's not a big highlight and there's no guarantee I'll be on TV or make it to the next stage, for me, it just confirmed that if you just don't put yourself out there to be vulnerable with your art and to allow people to see your art, you just don't know where it's going to lead. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And I didn't know that I was going to go on this, journey to America's Got Talent and film. And, I sat there reflecting like, wow, 3 years ago, I, you know, I didn't have magic in the back of my head at all. And here I am now filming this character that all started back to when I had cancer. And I somewhat reflect and it brings a tear to my eye, like, you just don't know. Life is a big mystery, but you really got to just go out there and just go on that journey blindly. And, that's my highlight, man.
That's awesome, dude, and I look forward to hearing some updates on America's Got Talent. And once you're on there, I'll look positively. You'll have to come back after you win it all, and talk on the show. All right.
Yeah,
And I have two more questions for you here
yeah.
before we get out of this. This next one you kind of answered a little bit already too, but maybe you want to elaborate on it. It's, what do you want your audience to take away when they see you as Faust?
Well, I definitely, first and foremost, I want everyone to have fun and just, kind of submit to the whole story of Faust. I mean, there are two ways you can watch magic, and the first way is to sit there and analyze it, which is fine. You can do that. But what I'm hoping is that I'm hoping that you will take the time to just kind of let it all absorb, because what I hope to do in you as a performer is to give you this magical experience or a memorable experience while you're watching Faust.
Okay.
And on a higher level, I hope that you'll just have fun and be inspired by what Faust is and what he's trying to do up there. And that's it, you know.
Very cool, man. Yeah, sometimes I'll admit, sometimes I do analyze. I wonder how he did that trick. I wonder, like was there like a string somewhere or like something like that? But it's the times when you are able to like suspend your belief in reality, or like that and just let it happen and experience it as like an illusion. That's when it's kind of like you just let the wonder set in, just enjoy
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And
It's definitely, just enjoy it, and you probably know how it's done, maybe, when you see a trick, but when you come to see me, just try to indulge in the whole mystery of it all.
indulge in the mystery of it all. I like that. That might even be the title of the episode.
Right.
Maybe. All right, Chris, it's been great talking to you today. I do have one more question for you, but before I get to that question, where can people find you on the internet? What is your corner of the World Wide Web?
Yeah, so you can find me on chrisherrenmagic.com. I'm also on social media, Chris Herren as Faust on Instagram, and Chris Herren as Faust on Facebook. You can look me up. My videos are on there. My upcoming show is going to be at Lucky Chances Casino in Colma, California, and it's called the Magic Speakeasy. And March 28th, you'll find me with other performers, and I encourage you guys to really come out and see me if you guys want to see some pretty good magic, very different from what you normally see.
That's a modest pitch. Come out and see some pretty good magic. Uh, but
Okay.
all right, man. It is
Yeah.
time for that title question of the show. I appreciate you once again making time to talk to me today. And Chris Herren, A.K.A. Faust, how do you live uncontained?
You got to be inspired. You cannot be afraid to show that little weirdness or vulnerability about who you are. And the way I live uncontained is I just go on the magic journey and I just let it happen. You will never know how things are gonna be unless you just take that first step on that path, and you never know where it's going to lead. But I can assure you, the whole experience is going to surprise you, and it's going to be filled with mystery and a lot of memorable moments for you.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I have one final thing for you to do, Chris, and that is sign off the show. Would you do me the honor of signing off the show today?
Absolutely. My name is Chris Herren as Faust, and I live uncontained.
And that does it for another episode of Uncontained. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Chris for joining me on the show today. Also, please support the show. Go to uncontainedpod.com, click that Amazon banner at the top of the page, or if you need some Uncontained merch to complete your wardrobe, you can check us out at tpublic.com. And got Uncontained shirts, Uncontained coffee mugs. You can't go wrong with that. So check it out. Support the show. Tell a friend about it at the very least. And we got more great shows coming up for you here on Uncontained. And we will be back at you. Next episode will be Antonio C. T. Yes, a filmmaker, a return guest to the show, so we'll catch up with him. So make sure you are clicking that subscribe button so you get the notification when the show comes out directly to your podcast player of choice. Thank you once again for listening, and make sure you check out Chris's contact information, his social media in the show notes. It's all there. And don't forget about the Magic Speakeasy, yes, March 28th at Lucky Chances Casino in Colma. And until next time, live uncontained.